أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أمير المؤمنين علي ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, in the next point with regard to the God-fearing, he says قَلِيلًا زَلَلُ. If we take a look at what we mean when we talk about az-zillah, or az-zalla afwan, I should say. When we say zalal, what it actually means. And when Amir al-Mu'min is saying qalil, where he says qalilan zalalu, qalilan zalalu, meaning that it's few, it's only a little. But a zalal is when you there's a lapse or you stumble or a misstep, when you accidentally deviate, when you make, it could be something small, generally refer to it as a shortcoming. Not necessarily a sin, but any moment where there is a lapse. The Imam says their lapses from the right path or their lapses from righteousness are qaleel. They're few and far between. As we know, humans are prone to error. Humans make errors, humans make mistakes, humans transgress, and we do have lapses. But there's a difference when it comes to these lapses with certain individuals. For example, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayh says, Zallatul jahili ma'dhura. The zalla, or the shortcoming, I hope everyone understands what I mean by a shortcoming or zalla. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily be a sin. It's any time where there's a lapse where you move away from the right path, slightly even. This is what we're saying. So as we go along, people understand for those that don't. Zallatul jahili ma'dhura. An ignorant person, when they have a lapse, it's excusable. People let it go. For example, when you take a look at a child, when a child does something wrong, when a child, for example, there's a cup of tea and he pushes it and it falls, we overlook it. But if an adult was to walk up and tip a cup of tea over, people think he's mad. People would look at it and say, what's wrong with this person? So generally with a younger person, we excuse what they do. When you see your children do something wrong, and there's like 3 of them are involved in something, who cops it the worst from the parent? The eldest. Why? The first thing you say, "Ente كنت لازم تعرف, you should have known better." And then the oldest tries to get out by saying, oh, but they made me do it. And then it goes back to that good old saying, if he told you to jump off a bridge, would you? But the thing is, we always blame the eldest because they should know better. Whereas the ignorant person, we excuse their lapses. As we do with a person that's not from a religious environment. You know, sometimes you see someone that's converted to Islam, for example, and their whole life they've been raised in a non-Islamic household. So when they have a lapse, we excuse it. And because they also have different habits. I remember once we were in the Hajj, and there was one guy who went to sleep in his underwear. And then you had to explain, listen, there's a bit of an issue here. You need to get dressed. There are other people in this room. You're not by yourself to begin with. And then he looked and said, what's wrong with that? He was new to religion. And he didn't know that this is a wrong thing. You can't get up and scold them. You can't get up and attack them because they don't know any better. This is what they see to be correct in this way. But then Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi says, Zallatul aqil kabira. When it comes to someone of intellect, someone of understanding, their lapses are considered to be big. Because, like I said, the child's excusable, but in their case it isn't. Why is it the hardest and we consider it to be big? Because it affects others. Remember what I told you about 2 weeks ago? The problem with sitting and discussing your past in front of others. You know, when we sit down with other people and we tell them things about our past, you're sitting down and two guys are talking and they tell you a story, and you look at these people, they look like religious people, and then he tells you, oh, back in the days when we used to go clubbing, and you say, you used to club? And it has an effect on the people around them. It has an effect, especially because they're religious people. Someone that is religious, because aqil, when we say aqil, it doesn't mean an academic. This is the biggest problem. When we say an intelligent person, it doesn't mean someone that got the highest marks in the HSC and has got double doctorates. Aqil is the highest point of faith. It's someone that is a mu'min, is a muttaqi, someone of the highest point, because you cannot be a aqil and not believe in God, to start off with. You have no intelligence at all if you believe the world came by chance. You can't be intelligent because it's illogical, period. So when we see someone that is of intelligence, we expect to see the best of them. If they have a lapse, it will affect the people around them. It affects people, and this is why if you see in the head of a household, the father and the mother have such a big effect on their children. And what they do affects the child. That's why Imam Al-Qadim salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, if you promise your child, do not break that promise, fulfill it. He says, because in their opinion, you are the one that sustained them. You sustain them. In other words, you are the one that gives them their sustenance. Their rizq comes from you. They see you as a deity. And I'll explain it as we move along a bit more. In another hadith, it says, Zallatul mutawaqqi ashaddu zalla. Especially the one that guards against evil. It is the most difficult, the hardest, when they lapse, when they do something wrong. In any way. Because of the position that they have in this status. Now we move along and we go to the hadith, moves on, and then it says, Zallatul alim tufsid al-awalim. Moves up a bit more. If a person is a scholar and they lapse, tufsid, you know what this means? It ruins the people. When a scholar lapses, the people become ruined. Why is this so? Firstly, we need to understand that the layman perceives the scholar with the light of divinity. You remember the story of the child. Whoever has heard it, has heard it. Whoever hasn't, hasn't. The child walks in and he goes and washes, puts a sajda on the ground and starts to pray. And the parents, they look and they say, you're praying, we haven't got up to pray yet. And it's prayer time, and yeah, we haven't got up to pray. And he says, Allah told me to pray on time. Parents say, this kid's not reading the Quran. What's going on? Then he starts, every time he does something good, he says, Allah told me to do this. So the parents go, a kid must be getting divine inspiration. He must be getting wahi upon him. He must be something special. So then one day, they're at the masjid, and as they're sitting down, the father's talking to someone, and the child says, shh, Allah's talking. The whole time, the child's been perceiving the sheikh in the masjid as God. They see them with a divine light. This is the problem. So when the scholar lapses, everything goes to waste. Everything falls apart. In fact, another hadith says, Zallatul alim kankisar as-safina. Listen to this. تغرق وتغرق معها غيرها. That when the alim lapses, when the scholar lapses, it's like the sinking ship. It sinks and everyone within it drowns. Do you understand what I mean? Because they're the bastion that holds the religion. This is what they're looked at. If you see, and proof of this, the exodus towards, طبعا, this is an oxymoron. The exodus towards atheism. Why? This came out after all of the exposure towards the Catholic Church. Remember all the child molestation? That's why people aren't interested in religion anymore. Because they used to look at the priest. What do they call the priest? Father. He's looked upon with this divine light. The preacher, in fact, the preacher was the head of state. They needed the blessing of the preacher. They used to rule the lands. People used to listen to them. Their word was gospel. No one would turn against them. People would always obey them. And then once this was taken away with these, not lapses, these deviations, the people left the faith. They said, إِذَا هَذَا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. If this guy is from God and he's like that. You can destroy nations in this manner. If a scholar avoids something with shubha, something that's suspicious, yani the scholar avoids haram, and he avoids makruh, and he avoids shubha, he avoids something that has suspicion, then you will find those around him, they will avoid what? They'll avoid haram and they'll avoid makruh. If he only avoids makruh and haram, they'll only avoid haram. If he only avoids haram, then they'll do lesser sins. If he does lesser sins, then they'll do greater sins. You understand the system, how it works? So a alim that gets up and prays morning prayers on time, the followers will pray morning prayers at the end of time. If you pray Salat al-Layl, then they'll pray at least Salat Subh on time. If the alim, and if you see a scholar who leads a majmu'ah, leads a group of people, gets up and prays Salat Subh Qada, what do you think happens to the people? They don't pray. If he's praying Qada, they're not going to pray anymore. This is the effect. And this is why believing in the infallibility and the sinlessness of the prophets is fundamental to your religion. It is a core of your religion. If they were not infallible, then Allah would not say to you, well, He will not put in the Quran, ittaqullah wa ati'un, ittabi'uni, obey me, or follow me. He wouldn't write this. God will say, hold on, these guys they're bad. I can't get the people to follow them. You know, they've got too many mistakes. He wouldn't put them in this position. He would not say in the Quran, قَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِيهِمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that the prophets, they are the exemplar for you. They are the way of life. They are the role model that you set your life on. Even remember when I told you the word imam, The word imam means yardstick. Yardstick, طبعا English doesn't sound too right. Yardstick is the measurement or the bar that you measure your life by. It means that they are the perfect example that you judge your life by. If they are not this perfect example, then the whole world will be a mess. When you sit there, honestly, when you sit there and read about the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, you know, one narration I was reading last night, I could not fathom. You know, sometimes people say, who is Ali ibn Abi Talib? You say, what is Ali ibn Abi Talib? Salawatullah alayhi. You cannot fathom, you cannot understand what kind of a person he was. That his brother in the hadith, when he comes and asks from Bayt al-Mal, not from Amir al-Mu'mineen, he asks from the treasury of Islam. And the narration says his children look like they have indigo. They look that ill from poverty. But he doesn't give him, see, if it was my brother and it's my money, yes, I favor him over the people. Al-aqrabuna awla bil ma'ruf. Your near ones are favored. But Baytul Mal is for the Muslimin. It's for all the Muslims. He doesn't give them favor. If the people that rule and have the right position, the leading position, are even minutely like this, then the people will rush to the religion. The people will look at them and say, this is a leader that I can be proud of following, because he doesn't have these lapses. The God-fearing, however, have few shortcomings. They have lapses, but they are few and far between. And their lapses aren't catastrophes. You won't have a muttaqi accidentally have a drink. You won't have a muttaqi accidentally fornicate. You won't have a muttaqi accidentally steal. There are lapses when he's saying قَلِيلًا زَلَلُ. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayh could be something that you and I would probably look at and say, is that wrong? We didn't know that was a wrong thing to do. This is what it's trying to say. The reason you need to understand over all these nights why I'm discussing this is the perfection of humanity. This is what we have to aim for through our lives. This is what we have to aim. Because when you're like this, this is when you have that inner peace. That inner peace that you have with your God. The infallible doesn't even have this as zalal. In Ziyarat Jama' al-Kabira, Imam al-Hadi narrates this ziyarah. He says, Asamakumullah min az-zalal. That even the shortcomings, even these lapses, the asma of Ahl al-Bayt, when people think of the asma of Ahl al-Bayt, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'in, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Their asma is not about greater sins, and it's not about lesser sins. It's more than this. They don't have a lapse. They do not lapse at any point. This is why we set them in this position where we find them. Now, if we take a look at the advantage of not having lapses, what is the advantage of not lapsing or making mistakes? Firstly, apologizing to someone is degrading. It's abasing. You know, when you have to go samah with someone, you go, how am I going to do this? Apologizing to someone is harder than asking for a girl's hand in marriage. Believe me. Even though people have difficulty in doing that, will they accept me or won't they accept me? When you go to apologize for something you've done wrong because you come from beneath, the other guy's from above. And it's so much so you're going to stand there, and this is if you notice when they want to get someone that's got an alcohol problem. Alcoholic Anonymous, what's one of the first steps they have to do? They have to apologize for everyone they've wronged while they were drunk. Why? Because if they don't break this person's head in, he's not going to realize the damage that they've done. And when you come to apologize to someone, they want to hear the words, I am sorry. You can't just say, look, I apologize for what I did yesterday. Because then you're going to turn around. You can't just say that I apologize. They tell you, no, you have to say, I am sorry. They want to hear the word sorry. So firstly, apologizing is degrading. It abases a human being. Secondly, if you don't have any of these shortcomings, you have an easier life. You know? You make a mistake, you have to make amends for it. You don't make mistakes, your life is, you're on easy street. You don't have problems. What's more important is the hisab. If you don't have lapses, you're one of those people that, that moves towards his grave and you're happy. Just before you die, you say, all right, I'm on easy street. I'm going to be one of those that when the Quran says, وَمَنْ أُوتِيَ فَمَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ, the one that gets their book in their right hand, what do they say? هَا أُمُقْرَأُ كِتَابِيَ إِنِّي ظَنَنْتُ أَنِّي مُلَاقٍ حِسَابِيَ. He says to the people, read, how do you like them apples, Tells the people, look, read, and what I've got, these are my results. He's happy about it. He's very happy about what he's received. And then he says, إِنِّي ظَنَنْتُ أَنِّي مُلَاقٍ حِسَابِيَ. That he was almost certain that he was on this path. Sometimes people say, I don't know. Like this guy recently that said, I don't know if the Prophet doesn't even know if he's going to heaven or hell. Yeah? People that say stuff like that, people know if they're going to heaven or hell. One man came up to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and said, how do I know? It's not a lottery. The hereafter is not a lottery. You're not buying a ticket waiting to see if you're going to win. This man asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, how do I know if I'm in heaven or hell? He said, account yourself or judge yourself, compare yourself to the book of God. Look at the people of paradise, who they are. Look at the people of hell, who they are. Where do you fit? It's not something difficult for you to look at and assess. At least you can work out where you are. So, إِنِّي ظَنَنْتُ أَنِّي مُلَاقٍ حِسَابِي وَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ فِي جَنَّةٍ عَالِيَةٍ. That this person has a pleasurable life and a pleasurable hereafter. He doesn't have problems. But how does someone become like this, to have only a few errors? The first thing you need to do is to understand, do not rush into something you don't know anything about. You have to have proper understanding. Even those with proper understanding, they don't rush. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, says, الزلل مع العجل. الزلل مع العجل. You lapse, why? Because you rush. You've heard the saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. People, sometimes you're sitting down and there's an alim in the room, a scholar. Someone asks Maulana, Sayyidna, Sheikhna, they ask him a question. They say, ask him a question, and as they're asking, there's that guy that sits there, Brainy Smurf, the one that's always there, doesn't let Papa Smurf talk because he thinks he knows everything. And everyone can't stand Brainy Smurf, but he has to give his opinion. There's always that Brainy Smurf that sits there. And they give you the answer. And they cut off. The problem with this is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Bab Madinat al-Ilm, the doorway to the city of knowledge. If he was present in the presence of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he would tell them, you're asking me a question in the presence of Rasulullah. And this is Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the one that knows everything. He's the doorway to the city of knowledge. But he says, Rasulullah is present. You're asking me? Then you have someone that's read 2 sentences in an Ansariyan book, and he's sitting in front of a mujtahid. And I've seen it too many times. You ask the mujtahid the question, And this guy that's read 2 sentences answers the question. And the mujtahid goes quiet. Rather than backhand him as what the person deserves, but it doesn't receive it at the point. And this is what makes people make mistakes. This is why you have to go back and fix problems. You know the people that give, you know how many times people ask a question, and they ask you a question, is this haram? And then if you say, like, if they ask you, can I put songs at my wedding? And then you say it's haram. And then they say, well, I asked the sheikh and he said it's halal. I said, why are you asking me then? Just follow this sheikh friend of yours that you've asked and good luck to you. And then they turn around and go, no, you need to research it. In other words, you need to give me the answer that satisfies me. They say that, I think it was Sayyid Muhammad Al-Qazwini, rahmatullah alayh. They say that once he was given a speech, and then after he finished, someone came up to him and said, you know how the hand in the question, someone said, can a woman dance in front of her husband? Because they bring it in slowly to see how far. And then he said yes. And then someone says, can a woman dance in front of other women? And then he said, hurry up, just bring the question where it says, can I drink alcohol with my wife? You know, get to the end of it. Don't give me these step-by-step questions. And this is what people do. They give you step-by-step because they want you to absolve them. And the problem is, there are people in this world that do absolve them. There are those that will answer the question and they'll put their neck as a bridge for people on the day of judgment into the fire of hell. Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khou'i, rahmatullah alayh, do you know what they say about him? They say when someone used to ask him a question, a jurisprudential question. You're talking about someone that was teaching jurisprudence for over 70 years. Teaching. For over 70 years. They say he used to grab his book, his minhaj, his own book, and he'd research it and he'd read it to you. Even though he knew the answer. This is how much, what was he using here? Precaution. Why? People may say, look, he doesn't even know, he has to read it from a book. He does know. Okay? But he fears the day of judgment. The ulama fear the day of judgment. They fear the accountability. They fear that one day that they will be accountable for everything they say. And even something like the slip of a tongue, you know what they call a faux pas. The hadith says, he زَلَّةُ اللِّسَانِ أَشَدُّ مِنْ جُرْحِ السِّنَانِ. The slip of a tongue, they call that a faux pas. When someone has a slip of a tongue, they say something, the hadith says it has more bite basically. This is basically what it's saying, than the teeth. Remember when I was at work, when I first started, I was about 18 years old. There was this, I used to always work with older guys, and they were really wise. They give you sayings. One guy was an Italian Australian. And he taught me a saying back then, I always kept it in my head. He told me, la lingua non ha ossa, ma rompi li ossa. He said, the tongue has no bones, but it breaks bones. And I never forgot that saying. It has no bones, he said, but it breaks bones. But the thing is, he understood as it breaks other people's bones. I understood it's going to break my bones on the day of judgment. This is what my tongue's going to do to me. أَفَ بِلِسَانِ هَذَا الْكَالِ. This tongue, kal, I've exhausted with what? Kal ashur. On sin, I've exhausted. I've exhausted with lying, I've exhausted with ghiba, I've exhausted with namima, I've exhausted with all these bad things. If I do not think before I speak. This is how you stop yourself. Think. Sometimes, you're sitting down, you go, you know what? Should I say this? You have this. When you think, work it out. Is this going to benefit me? No, be quiet. Let someone else talk. Be quiet. They say, you're considered, they say it's better to be considered a fool and keep your mouth shut than open your mouth and remove all doubt. It's better, honestly. It's better for people to say, oh, this person doesn't know anything. Better than to open your mouth and prove it to be true. Another thing, in order for me to have few errors, don't keep bad company. This is one of the biggest problems. Don't keep a bad friend. If you have a bad friend, it is the worst thing. Because a bad friend, and I'll tell you how you work out the difference between a good friend and a bad friend. A good friend is someone, when you look at them, you remember God on the day of judgment. That's a good friend. That when you're around them, you have weigh your words. You go, can I? You know those people, sometimes every field's different. Like a child comes home, talks to his parents, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? Sits down, goes to school, every second letter, every second word is a 4-lettered word. And then they come back home and they're angels again. Those that make you become an angel when you're around them, they're the people you need to associate with. Those that, the whole discussion, as I say in Arabic, بِالظِّنَّارَ وَتَحَت, from below the belly, they're the ones you need to abstain from. Another thing is, don't go to places of suspicion. An area where a lot of people, they go, oh, I'm just going to a cafe. If I'm going to a cafe, where is this cafe? Does this cafe have music? Is this cafe, people go, I went to Brighton, there isn't much music. I said, but what is walking past? You're putting yourself in a place of shubha. You're sitting at a cafe, but every 5 seconds, it's like a chicken salesman walks in. Breasts, eyes, everywhere, as much as you want. And you're not going to lapse. Of course you're going to lapse. You will lapse. You're human. Once again, unless you bat for the other team. That's another story. And they are mindful of the hereafter. You always think about what's to come. Think about the accountability of your actions. If you're mindful of the hereafter, you won't do wrong. You won't make these lapses. You won't put yourself into these positions. But the main thing is be preoccupied with yourself and not with others. Man raqaba an-nas ma tahamman. The people that look at others. When you, for example, the muttaqi I mentioned 3 years ago when I first started this series, when they read the Quran, every verse they reflect upon themselves. Themselves. They don't look at this and go, this is like Joe over there, always does ghiba. Why were you saying that? You were doing ghiba too, brother. No, I'm different. Astaghfirullah. I'm just using an example. They start to do ta'wil for all the things they say. They try to explain it so they can absolve themselves of the sin. This is like one alim heard that two of his students were sitting with some people and they were talking about him. They were doing his ghiba. He said, I forgive the laymen, the commoners that were there, I forgive them. But my students I don't forgive. And they said, why not? Why don't you want to forgive your students? He said, because the laymen that were there, they're just talking, they don't care. They're just saying whatever comes to them, whatever they want to hear. They're just having discussion. He said, but as for my students, they know the rules of ghiba. Someone that studied a bit of religion, they know the rules. In order to make this ghiba permissible, they would have had to make me into a fasiq first. Because if you become a fasiq, it doesn't have any ghiba. Like someone that, what's a fasiq? Someone that drinks publicly in the street. You see someone holding a stubby, even if he's a Muslim. He's a stubby or a tiddy, he's walking through the street, okay? Not the brown paper bag, you can actually see the stubby, let's be serious. And they're drunk, this is a fasiq. So in other words, the alim was saying they would have made me into a fasiq, like that guy, before they spoke about me. I wouldn't even think about them. Worry about yourself. What am I doing wrong? And if you're mindful of this, then you will not have any lapses. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullah alayh, when he mentions this, he puts it with those that have a slip in the aql. That's how you have the lapse. He says, Na'udhu billah min subat al-aql وقبح الزلال. سبات العقل, that moment where you have that lapse, that slight lapse. He says, I ask God in refuge. He has asked God to protect him from that lapse. Why? Because the ugliness, the lapse within your intellect brings the ugliness of that shortcoming, or the evil of that shortcoming that later you have to make amends for. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to clear us of all these lapses. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, and I ask Him in the name of His most beloved creations, in the name of Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein and Ali and Muhammad and Ja'far and Musa and Ali and Muhammad and Ali and Hassan and Hujjat al-Muntadhir, Sahib al-Amr wa zaman, that none of you leave this month with an inkling of sin or anything that you will be tried with on the day of judgment. ببركة الصلاة عليهم أجمعين. صلوا عليه.